Last year, violence between two families in the Weenan area in KZN spilled over onto a profitable community-owned citrus farm. A murderous killing spree left the people shattered and investors fled. But today we can report an extraordinary turnaround, overcoming enormous odds. The oranges are being packed as we speak. Just how did they do it?
In November last year, I visited the Sun Valley Citrus Estate near Weenan in KwaZulu-Natal. The farm was on the brink of collapse. It was a sad and desolate place surrounded by violence.
Amaphoyisa la awasiza mawafonela kutshela kahle sisabuza kuleyo ndawo leyo umphakathi loyo.
Conflict had ripped the community apart and criminals had murdered 40 people in the district. Terror reigned, harvests rotted. Mpume Madondo worked at the farm.
Osikwenzayo nje ukuthi mhlambe kushaw 6 ukuthi qinisekise ukuthi wonke umuntu usengaphakathi ejaldini ulele ngoba once kwakhwalala akukho safety. Yebo ngoba uqhuma kwesibhamu ngeke izwazi ukuthi ke ubani kwenzakalani ngasikhathi sini.
Eventually, the police cracked down and confiscated 74 weapons, including high-caliber rifles. But it was too late for the Sun Valley farm. The investors who leased the communal land fled over a weekend. Piweni Mncube grew up close to the farm, and she watched horrified as they drove out the tractors and trailers filled with the equipment that made the farm operational.
I knew this farm is an important farm to everyone. It's like it's feeding a lot of families.
She has studied management accounting and economics and has been appointed to manage the Sun Valley office.
My mom was working here. I went to university because of this farm. So I was crying.
Roland Henderson is a local beef farmer and mentor on land reform projects. He's watched as one land program after another has failed in this district, and he didn't want to see that happen again at Sun Valley.
I had an option that I could have just turned around and commiserated with everybody and gone home and continued to be a beef farmer, which is easier than this.
But he didn't. Instead, he made a decision that he would do whatever he could to save the largest employer in the Nkosi Langalibaleli district.
The communities had the option that they could have just stripped the farm, and none of us took those worst-case options.
The local Indona had also signed a peace agreement to end the violence. But it was the bitter einde, says Roland Henderson, who can take the credit for this unfolding story.
So the people who have invested the most in this farm is actually the staff who came to work who didn't get a full salary.
120 people, mostly women, believed that they could save the farm, even if it meant coming to work on an empty stomach. Sabatile Sitole is in charge of the pack house.
The reason why Silas Corn is because we were not working for the money. We were all working to develop the farm.
And that meant developing the local people to replace the white managers who had left. Sabatile had a bit of computer experience, but she was initially nervous to run the pack house.
It was a big job, and when they took me from printing the labels to be the pack house manager, I was like, guys, I won't have the power to run the pack house. They all said, no, Sabatile, you must go. We will give you support. And they gave me that support.
Piweni Mncube was selected for her grasp of numbers, her innate business sense, and her ability to manage relationships in a complicated social environment. There is no precedent of a woman leading a business operation of this scale in the area, and some men don't easily take instruction.
It's difficult, but I'm trying. Because abanye bavele bathi sitshelani lo.
And we found that together, marshalling our resources and our management capabilities, we were able to replace that white management which had left and thereby empower the people to do what they knew how to do anyway. So at this point in time, all the management is taken care of by black people, emerging farmers, and predominantly ladies.
By the time I left the farm last year, Roland Henderson was already knocking on the doors of government and banks to get bridging finance of 12 million rand or the farm would close.
We knocked on many, many doors, and the weeks went by and the months went by, and then we realized that this just wasn't going to happen. that we would have to make do with what we had.
But what they had was not even close to the 12 million rand they needed.
There are many times that I lost faith. And when you feel that your cause is worthwhile and people turn you down, you do lose faith.
So, Henderson dug into his own pocket and found a partner, local businessman James Mbongwa.
He's a teacher by profession, but an engineer. And I'd heard that he was possibly open to coercion to help us on this farm. So in terms of the money that's been invested, James has invested the most of it, and he's a pretty firm disciplinarian.
But the obstacles in their way were almost insurmountable. First, Eskom cut off their power.
Eskom, in their wisdom, switched off the electricity between Christmas and New Year, and then the gentleman who did that, he went on 2 weeks' leave.
With no electricity and no money to pay Eskom, they couldn't irrigate, and no water meant a reduced harvest.
When there was no irrigation in the orchard, it was so terrible.
Then the hail came. But God also came to the rescue and brought the rains.
Literally every 3 weeks that our trees needed rain, we got rain. And we got it right into April. We had specialists look at our trees and they said, "You guys have irrigated very well." We said, "No, we've not irrigated at all."
By January, their first lemons were ready and the oranges were ripening, but they still had no tractors or trailers.
It was so terrible because, okay, I was thinking that picking season is coming, but how are we going to fetch the oranges from the orchard?
That problem was solved by Thenjiswa Gai, an official from the Department of Agriculture who loaned them 6 tractors for the harvest.
Even though it's a small amount of assistance, it was critical. And Thenjiswa has been one of those agriculture officials who's gone beyond her calling to assist us.
Sabatile Sitole recalls those dark days of no salaries, no working packhouse, and only the experience of the older women to guide them through.
Was the time where we were harvesting the lemon. Hey, we were sisebenzisa igubhu, sisiphorisha ama lemon ngeindwangu, sisayiza ngamehlo because they were old ladies here having experience. They sizing using their eyes, packing it in the boxes, waxing it using the spray. Yo.
Finally, they'd harvested enough lemons to fill a container for export. Perhaps they could now pay wages, but those first lemons blighted their enthusiasm.
We wanted to export, but the old pallet that we sent, they all fell. Then I said, that thing cannot go anywhere.
Their post-harvest chemical mixture for the lemons was wrong, and they rotted.
We learnt about things called sour rot, which I'd never heard of before as a beef farmer.
So we have to unpack them all and start again.
And those were our steep learning curves. Those were the school fees that we paid.
They never made that mistake again. Then, a bonus. Their helpful agent paid them in advance for their next batch of lemons.
Kuba khona lokho okuncane esikutholayo, lokho bekusinika ithemba ukuthi ngelinye ilanga we're going to get something more, something big.
Eventually, in April, during lockdown, the sun rose once again in their valley. The orange harvest was about to begin.
When we started, it was daunting. I'd never picked an orange in my life. So we look forward to the next year because we now know that we can do this properly. We've taught ourselves those skills and we've coalesced into a cohesive business plan.
By September, when the harvest is complete, they will have exported over 100,000 boxes to the Middle East. Fortunately, the ports stayed open during lockdown for citrus exports.
And it was a magic because ngesikhathi esincane izinto eziningi zenzekile. Sigi like a history, but in 1 year.
And the fearful Mpumi Madondo that I spoke to last year has been transformed by their efforts.
And next year sizokwenza more because we didn't spray, we didn't irrigate, we didn't do nothing, but we exporting.
And like we have paid more or less 6 million rands in salaries and wages. I'm so proud of it.
By the end of the harvest, they will have broken even and paid off all their debts. They still need tractors and equipment, but those will come. And it is only through their own faith and resilience that the people of this valley have overcome violence and given themselves a future.
Engakusho lapho cabanga ukuthi ke ukubambisana kwethu nokuzwana kwethu nokungathi silento esiyenza siyenzela for imali siyenzela for thina senzela for ingane zethu senzela for izizukulwane nezizukulwane esisilandelayo ngicabanga ukuthi lento iumlando engasoze sayikhohlwe empilweni zethu noma ngabe sesino 90 years.
Thank you for watching our stories here online, and please subscribe below to become part of our YouTube community and be notified when we upload our latest content.